Great. Okay, we can get started now. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We are going to do a webinar that we've titled The New Journey Maps, looking specifically on how we are using the jobs to be done framework to evolve your traditional journey map. I just want to call out one more thing. We have a live poll going. We'll close it in a second, and that will help us determine where we discuss different topics today. So today we're going to get into a framework that's really helped us out in building client roadmaps, increasing our confidence on what we build, really putting ourselves in our users' shoes and quantitatively creating what we call opportunity scores, what the industry calls opportunity scores. How many of you all have looked at a journey map and not really known where to focus or where the priority is? That's exactly what this framework addresses. And we'll get more into that in a second. First, I thought we would start with some introduction. So my name is Nate Wooten. I am the Director of Product Innovation at WillowTree. A little bit about me, I studied computer science and systems engineering at the University of Virginia. I've since switched more into the ideation phase of software development, have about 15 years in digital product strategy, ranging from startups in New York City to consulting with Fortune 500s. I have discovered that my passion is in the idea phase of software, as I said. I really love when we discuss new concepts and we start testing new concepts. So that said, I want to introduce you to our other co-host here today, Daniel Atwood.
Thanks, Nate. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Daniel Atwood. I'm Principal Product Strategist at WillowTree. I hail from New York City originally, now call Charlottesville, Virginia home, where we have our headquarters. So like probably most people on this call, we're all working from home at the moment. Instead, hope everyone's staying safe and healthy. Like Nate, I've got about 15 years in product strategy. I bounce back and forth between the private and the social sectors for most of my career. And at WillowTree, I sort of work with clients to find and measure and prioritize product opportunities for them. And I'm pretty passionate about sort of finding new ways of understanding what is really going to resonate with people and what is actually going to fit into their lives in a meaningful way, which is why I'm excited about this webinar today.
Me too, Daniel. Two excited co-hosts. Okay, so first I thought we would jump into what we hope you'll get out of the webinar. Three main takeaways. First is we're really going to explore why digital products fail and fail to live up to expectations. Of course, there's a million reasons why a software project could go sideways, but specifically, we're going to point out a missed opportunity in the ideation phase, a quick, rapid way to prioritize our customer needs, which is exactly the second takeaway. We hope that with this framework, we'll show you yourself feel empowered or inspired to determine what your customers' biggest problems are. And the third is we're going to give you a free template. We call this an opportunity map. It's kind of like a journey map, but with a specific type of quantitative data layered over it to really help you determine where the action is with regards to your roadmap. So those are three takeaways. I just want to also reveal that we're going to offer two bonus templates at the end, tools that will reveal, we'll give you access to at the end of the webinar. So if you stick it around to the Q&A portion at the end, we're happy to show you a few other frameworks, link you to a few other frameworks that we've also found really helpful. So we do plan to have about 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. Before we get into things, just a couple intro slides so you have a little bit of context to how we got here. But our name is WillowTree. We have offices headquartered in Charlottesville, Virginia, as Daniel said, New York City, Durham, North Carolina, and Columbus, Ohio. And we call ourselves a digital product consultancy. It didn't start like that. We started in 2008 at what we call the dawn of mobile as just a mobile app shop. And we've since expanded to tackle all touch points of a consumer experience. As new platforms emerged, our clients increasingly asked us to help them deliver across all channels. So you can see in some of these mock-ups here, we no longer just do apps, we've expanded into web, media, we do television apps. Fun fact, we launched some of the apps and tablet experiences that recently streamed the Super Bowl. We do healthcare experiences, we build digital banks, so fintech experiences that don't necessarily have a brick and mortar component. We not only build these experiences, but we help direct clients in what they should build, which is exactly what the topic today is on. What kind of software do we build? We build what we call as mission critical. So we're not an ad agency. We don't necessarily build experiences that will just last an hour or a couple days. We build experiences that directly impact client bottom lines. And so really to do that, we need to determine where value is. What are true customer needs that are timeless and will thus be great places to plug in software? We call that mission critical software. So you can see here, we're a proud partner across the spectrum, some of the biggest brands in the world, all sorts of sectors, be it the world's leading beer company or the largest insurance provider. We focus on what we call software that matters. So next, maybe we can discuss some of the capabilities, and then we'll get into the webinar. This is the last intro slide, but as I said, we don't just focus on development, but we have a firm belief that the best software comes from a variety of capabilities and perspectives all integrated into one team. So we have about over 500 onshore employees that work closely and intimately to really build amazing software. You can see on the right here, once these experiences are live, we have a growth marketing service. So how do we build sticky experiences that reach out to people and through messaging, through intelligent messaging, push notifications, and help them out along the way. And then on the far left here, you can see we also offer product strategy, which is where Daniel and myself sit. So really playing in the space of what are our underlying user needs, what are some ways we can solve for these needs, and helping clients prioritize their roadmap. Great, so let's get into things. We really hope that today is interactive. So we have a poll, and we'll discuss the poll results today. And then if at any point a concept isn't clear, or you're wondering how you can apply this to your company, feel free to click the Q&A icon in your Zoom experience, and we'll queue that up and address them at the end in our Q&A session. So first, let's pause and get to know some of our attendees today. So we asked the question, have you used user journeys before? 71% of our audience said yes, they have. So that's great. We kind of made that assumption. If you haven't, then that's fine. We are going to introduce them at a quick level so you kind of have a foundational understanding of how you can use these tools to understand where you should take your digital experience. The next question was, how confident do you feel in making digital product roadmap decisions? So the distribution here is pretty much a bell curve ranging in confidence. We have most of our answers around somewhat confident, 41%. 12% of our attendees are not confident at all in their decisions that they make. And I think we have 1% of our attendees are very confident. So hopefully this shows you another tool to increase your confidence as we go throughout it. Just to kind of give you an idea of who we sampled, who our attendees are. We have a mixed list today from practitioners, a lot of people in the UX design space listening. We have some higher ups who are more in charge at a directional level, and we have a few different sectors from finance, media, and healthcare. So let's jump into things. So we're gonna introduce this webinar in 4 blocks. First, Daniel is going to discuss the need. So why do we need to pause and make sure we're solving our customers' biggest needs? And what are some of the implications if we don't? Then we'll hand it over to me. I'm going to introduce the jobs to be done framework and a concept concepts that we've nicknamed opportunity mapping. That's in theory. So then we're going to see it applied to, in an example. We are going to reinvent television using this framework, and you'll get to really understand more of a storyline how this works. And then at the end, we'll reveal the template. We'll link you to that, and we will reveal 2 more bonus tools that are available to you. And additionally, we'll save 10 minutes for Q&A. So let's get started. How about it, Daniel? Do you want to kind of kick it off with the need and why we need to pause and measure problems before solutioning?
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Let's jump right into it. So yeah, as Nate said, jumping right into the question, sort of why are we here? I think hopefully to some degree, everybody on the call is here for, to some degree, sort of the same reason. What's the need that we're trying to solve? And to put it another way, what's the need that we kept coming back to again and again in our work with clients across industries that sort of led us to what we want to talk about today? If you're on this call, I'm guessing that you're someone who, in some way, shape, or form is tasked with making ongoing product decisions about digital products, and that we've found is in some ways harder than ever before. And things that feel really important to focus on one day, like really quickly become old news, and you suddenly got to digest a whole new set of opportunities that you hadn't even considered previously. So as product owners or contributors or managers, we're all faced with this sort of unbelievable pace of change. I shouldn't even say unbelievable. I mean, it's just become the new norm now. And we hear from a lot of clients that keeping up is harder and harder to do, and we feel that as well. There are a couple of macro trends driving this that I think we should keep in mind during our conversation today. So I'm just going to quickly touch on these. The first is just an across the board increasing rate of experimentation with new customer experiences and new business models, right? Our clients are seeing this across nearly every industry. And that might mean that, there's new competitors, or existing competitors or new entrants that are experimenting with, applying subscription models in your space or the sharing economy, whatever that means to you, Internet of Things, AI, machine learning. Of course, everybody is always asking about this all the time, and with good reason. I mean, it's got implications almost everywhere. And among the many reasons that so many of us actually feel that pressure to continually evolve our digital offerings is that we kind of know, and the data backs it up, that customers actually reward those brands that are able to take advantage of the latest and the greatest where it makes sense. So 48%, right, of customers are more likely to be loyal to the brands that use the latest technology to engage and connect with them, right? So roughly half. But as we all know, we can't just continuously chase the latest technology. We can't say, oh, what was announced at the latest product unveiling, let's go chase it and incorporate it. Where does it make sense? We have to be making smart decisions about what is actually worth our time. And that's what we want to talk about today. So we've got more change, more competition, more innovation than ever before. But in addition to that, sort of building on it and feeding it, we have an across the board drop in your average level of brand loyalty. I don't want to pretend this is the case for every brand, but pretty much, more the rule than the exception these days. So this obviously plays out differently for different businesses, but in general, people are more likely to shop around, consider the alternatives, keep an eye out for sort of the next great thing. Nielsen does a lot of research on exactly this and noted that only 8% of customers consider themselves to be firmly committed loyalists. And they kind of summed that up. Assume the people you consider to be the most loyal customers on the planet are in fact disloyal. That's arguably a bit hyperbolic, but it does really sum up the state of things quite nicely. People are getting more likely to try new things, both because of, we could talk about the reasons forever, right? There's the economy is doing well, obviously. Right now is a huge exception to that, but and the second large piece I would say is just that technology makes it easier and easier to sign up for new services, do freemium, whether it's a new financial service or a new app. Just try it, see how it goes. So these two forces are, of course, working in conjunction and reinforcing one another. And because of that, most of our clients are seeing more competition, right? Either in terms of new models being put out again by existing competitors or by new entrants into the space, faster release and innovation cycles among that competition. And ultimately that kind of boils down for us, and I would presume for many or most of the people on the call, to really like less room for error. And the opportunity cost of building something that's not useful or is not on target has arguably never been higher. So amidst all of that, we at WillowTree are generally tasked with sort of helping clients figure out what moves to make with their digital products and with their limited time and money. So just as an example, we had a client ask us to identify digital product opportunities in the space of pet ownership, cats and dogs specifically. So that's a fairly broad task. It's not as broad as all pets. At least they narrowed it down to cats and dogs. But it's still a pretty broad ask. And so we did a ton of qualitative research, helped us gather a lot of sort of those nuances, really flesh out those nuances in that experience of pet ownership. Probably work that a lot of you are familiar with. I mean, not this topic specifically, but that kind of work. We talked to pet owners. We tested out a lot of the existing services, digital services that were out there for pet owners and for pets. We followed dozens and dozens of cats and dogs on Twitter. And we, consolidated that into a user journey, which is presumably something that, or I guess, what is it? 71% of you are at least are fairly familiar with. Thanks, Nate. So just a really quick tour for those who are less familiar. We sort of chose this one because it's a fairly typical user journey. Every user journey is a little different, but it breaks up someone's experience with a brand or a service or a life stage into some discrete moments, sort of oversimplifying for the sake of making it useful. And then captures sort of the activities, what they're doing within those phases, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, etc. So zooming in, again, just a really quick tour, right? Let's just look at settling in at home. You just got a pet, zooming into like this part of the journey map. So we use this to capture, right, some of the activities. You're making room for all the new dog gear. You're making appointments with the vet. You're adding med reminders to your calendar. These are like the little sub behaviors that we see, or that anyone sees when you go out and observe people just doing things in the real world. And this is how we capture them. And it's great. The punchline here is not that user journeys are bad. We'll get back to that. Capturing sort of where you are from an emotional perspective, the things you're worried about, like, am I feeding the right food to this new pet? It's barking a lot. She's barking a lot. Is she going to outgrow that? And these are all things, some of which can be seen as sort of opportunities, potentially, depending on the business you're in. But there are some shortcomings, or sorry, one more, just seeing sort of like overall where you are on the overall emotional ride of pet ownership. So there's a lot of great insights in this journey that our researchers were able to pull out from research in this particular case. And we love user journeys and we use them all the time. But there are some shortcomings to them, like any approach. So first, I'll just get this one out of the way. They have some real limitations as communications devices, we've found. So if you know that even if you are really confident in your user journey and know that everything that's in there is in there for a reason and came out of really strong research, That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be convincing for every stakeholder involved in a given project, especially if they're someone who happens to really prefer quantitative data to qualitative insights. And we all encounter that. Secondly, a shortcoming, it's often not clear where to focus when you look at a user journey. Tons of cool insights, interesting stuff that, if you're a designer, you want to get in and design around, but it can seem like there are opportunities everywhere, which can be kind of paralyzing. And then the last thing I'd call out is just related to that. It's hard to tell from looking at a user journey which opportunities are the big ones and which are the small ones, and which are the ones that really have the biggest potential in terms of becoming a lasting part of somebody's life if you do create a solution around it, and also aren't already being solved or near being solved by someone else out in the marketplace. So it's really this lack of like built-in prioritization we've found that makes it so hard with user journeys, but just more broadly to know how to define a roadmap and how to make product decisions. And it ends up introducing a lot of risk into that process. And the end result is, right, just to pull one stat, that we're less sure about what's actually going to be embraced and appreciated by our customers. And this is just like the hard, cold reality that more often than not, product decisions are wrong for a host of reasons. So taking this a bit further, and I'm just going to run through these really quickly, and so we can get back to Nate and look at the framework. What you might call the big three, I guess, in the current school of thought on sort of product management, product development, opportunity identification, each have their own strengths and weaknesses. And to be clear, we use all of these, and we use them in conjunction, and we flip back and forth, but none are perfect, right? So real quick look, for the sake of this conversation today, I think a couple of important points to call out. Design thinking is fantastic at driving ideation, and it is excellent at getting everyone or nearly everyone involved within a business context, by which I mean the language and the processes around design thinking have become so integrated into business culture now that it's a really useful thing. And you're always going to have people who don't want to do anything with Post-its, but most people can kind of get on board with this process. And then as a downside though, it doesn't really help you prioritize opportunities. You get a bunch of really interesting human insights, arguably, and some cool product ideas, but it doesn't tell you how that thing is gonna, how that opportunity is gonna play out in the real world, in a real marketplace. Lean, similarly, it's great at testing assumptions quickly. It's great at understanding viability and feasibility and getting concrete data on those things when you are at that stage. But it is not the tool that helps you identify sort of undiscovered opportunities that maybe you haven't considered before. And then lastly, agile, great at iterating towards solving a known problem, great at staying nimble when you're learning, as when you learn new data as you go, obviously an improvement over waterfall, but less good at discovering problems that need solving, right? At unearthing those unexpected. This is not that tool. So summing all of that up, what we found, what we needed to get more refined in our understanding of what is actually going to meet a need. Switching gears, Theodore Levitt was an economist and a professor at Harvard Business School. Incidentally, if you know his name, you might know that he's the person who coined the term globalization. That's a whole different webinar. But one thing that he's remembered for, and the reason we're introducing him now, is that he really pushed companies to think differently about what industry they were in. So he sort of famously asked whether a railroad company is in the railroad business or the transportation business, helped him to expand that thinking a little bit. Are movie studios in the movie business, or are they in the entertainment business? And when you think about yourself differently in that way, you start to think differently about who your competitors are, and a little bit more broadly. So he's often credited with saying that people don't want to drill, they want a hole in the wall. And you could take that further and say that, you don't want a hole in the wall, people want to picture hung on the wall, or they want a beautiful wall, or they want a beautiful home, and so on. So, and by the way, he was not the first to have this idea, but he popularized it. It's been around for a very long time. But this insight is really core to Jobs to Be Done, and I just want to like underline that before we jump into the specifics of as practitioners how we can make use of this. This idea of really stepping back and thinking not about the solution, but about the problem. And quickly, he also put this, I find this really interesting, in the context of like human behavior and how we as people, as practitioners, as product teams, tend to get stuck. And I totally include myself in this. Whoops. Nate, could you go back? Oh, I got it, sorry, thanks. He said that having created a superior product, management continues to be oriented toward the product rather than the people who consume it. I think it's a little unfair to pin that just on management. I don't get that. That's nasty, but we're all guilty of it to some degree. And so anyway, this is really what we really want to talk about today: how to continuously sort of keep one's head above the clouds, focused on customers rather than on products. So we've found a useful approach by taking some components of Jobs to Be Done and combining them with some components of user journeys. And what came out of that, we now call opportunity maps or opportunity mapping. And I'm going to hand it over to Nate now to tell us some more about what that looks like.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. So Daniel kind of explored how it's really easy to miss the underlying user problem through a lot of the other frameworks. And so we're going to introduce the Jobs to Be Done framework, a way that addresses how to go about focusing your journey maps. And we're going to do that with a metaphor of a dartboard. So here we have a dart on the left and we have a dartboard on the right. And building new software is kind of like throwing a dart against the dartboard. When you release a new feature or an idea or a dart, you kind of don't know if users are actually going to use it until you launch it. If you're lucky, bullseye, you build the feature and users engage with the feature, and that's great. So that's the gist here. That's the metaphor, throwing darts at a dartboard. We're going to explore some of the philosophies that Daniel introduced and really kind of play around with why they may or may not work and when they may or may not work. So the fail fast approach. The fail fast approach basically goes like this. Let's, instead of sitting around a boardroom discussing for weeks and weeks about what feature to build, let's just build something, get it out into production, into the market. Quickly, we'll get better each time we do that and get closer to the bullseye. So let's just fail fast. That'll create more lessons learned than planning for eternity. One other philosophy in the ideation space is rapid ideation. So with this dartboard metaphor, basically the concept goes, let's just throw as many darts as we can at once. One of them has got to hit the bullseye. So bringing that to digital, let's just mock up as many features we can. Let's prototype as many features we can, get them in front of our customers and get their reaction in some low fidelity manner and figure out which ones were stickiest. And so that's great when you know the problem you need to build, but there's a couple issues. These philosophies focus on solutioning before problem framing, where it's actually a little more cost effective to quickly figure out the problem you're facing. Not doing this first is a little bit like throwing a dart with blindfolds on. You don't necessarily know where the dartboard is in the room. So it will benefit you and your team to pause and quickly quantify your problem space. The other issue with those frameworks that we've been looking on is you might not even know if you're focusing on the right problem. Your customers have a handful of problems they face every day. Is this the most important problem? Is this the only dartboard in the room? And so to answer these questions, we've really found inspiration from the Jobs to Be Done framework. So strongly recommend this book, Jobs to Be Done, Anthony Olwick. The Jobs to Be Done theory has been in existence for a while, but Anthony really helped create a system to quantify things. And so we're going to bring that to life. And really, the framework here is a way to collect and prioritize unmet user needs. How great would it be if you knew all of the needs currently that your customers faced, and then you knew also which ones were the most important? So bringing that back to our dartboard metaphor, if we were to use the jobs to be done framework, instead of just throwing darts, we pause here and identify all of the problems, or we realize there are a lot more dartboards in the room. So let's just pause on the dart throwing until we can get a rope around all the dartboards. And then let's prioritize which of these dartboards are most important to our user base. And then now we can see the highest priority problems and we can begin the solutioning phase. So hopefully that metaphor held up with the dartboards. It really helped me kind of crystallize some of the thinking. And really, this all comes down to statistical power with those that approach software development with an ideas first approach, or let's just start throwing darts, see about a 5% success rate versus those companies that pause, evaluate the problem space, see about an 86% success rate. So really, there are a few unknowns that this framework helps tackle at the beginning. We found this framework really helps get stakeholders on the same page. A lot of our clients at the beginning of a project can see different departments, IT, marketing, having a different idea of what success looks like. This helps crystallize things down into a measurable framework. I'm really making sure we understand the right problems. So one of the key terms here that we want to introduce today is desired outcomes. Desired outcomes are a way to focus on user-centered needs. So they're user-centered statements that clarify what people are trying to accomplish. It is user-focused, it's not business-focused, and it helps us clearly get in the space of our users. So desired outcomes are measurable, controllable, actionable. They're devoid of solutions. So in Daniel's metaphor, they're focused on hanging the artwork, not necessarily around the solution, which is a drill, and they're stable over time. So again, these help us measure success. They help us understand how users will evaluate our offering, and they serve as a North Star during a lot of the chaotic times of an innovation project, but they help turn innovation from an art to a science. So we thought it'd be fun if we shared some desired outcomes we've collected from our past work. So as I said, we have a lot of media clients. A common desired outcome that we've collected from some past projects is that their users need to decrease the time it takes to discover something new to watch on television. That's a need, that's technology agnostic. It's a true user need. At the end of a long day, when you sit down on your couch, you put your feet up, you just want to engage in content. So that's the desired outcome here. Another example from some of our clients in our financial space, I need to increase my ability to see progress towards some of my financial goals. That's an outcome, and we can measure against that. From loyalty and food and beverage, I need to decrease the time it takes to submit an order. And one more example here. So from food and beverage, I need to increase my rewards for being loyal to a brand. So that third bullet point there, this works for consumer-focused software, but it also works for B2E, business to employee software, which is where that outcome came from. We built a lot of employee experiences for some of these clients that help them with more operational and efficiency focuses. So two sides to the coin. We've explored the user side of the coin. A desired outcome is user-centered. We make sure that it is tied to a business goal. So let's pretend we are building a ticketing app. The business goal here is, of course, increasing the ticket sales, whereas the desired outcome, the user side of the coin, is I need to minimize the ticket purchase time. Let's make it as easy as possible for our user. That's the desired outcome. So we found this following syntax really helps bring a noisy conference room together and focus on the same page. A desired outcome first starts with a verb, an action, and a direction, such as decrease. A unit of measurement, decrease the time, and an object of control. I need to decrease the time it takes to discover new content. So if we bring that back to our space of the dartboard metaphor, we can look at problems like jobs. All of these are things I need to do. All of these jobs and problems are blockers preventing me to get to my desired outcome. And so if we kind of span these jobs out like a journey map, like Daniel illustrated, we can bring in overlooks framework and measure each job. Specifically, there's two factors here. Each job has a certain amount of importance and a certain degree of satisfaction. So let's pretend you are trying to have the desired outcome to find something new to watch. Maybe one job on this journey would be, I need to review what the critics think of a piece of content. Me personally, that's an important job. I really like to know what the critics think before I engage with content. How satisfied am I with the current experience in the market of doing this? It's pretty easy. I Google it on my phone. I look it up on my phone. Maybe it could be embedded in the experience. I'm not sure. But so the takeaway here is where there's a gap between importance and satisfaction, that's where there's opportunity. So staying true to the overlooks formula here, we take the gap between importance and satisfaction, we add that to importance, and we can then come up with our opportunity score. The opportunity score is then a clear number that helps cut through a lot of the anecdotal noise and help us determine priority across our journey map. So you can envision here a whole array of jobs that we need to complete, and two jobs pop up as the most important. So that's the theory. Let's see it in practice. Let's move on to seeing how it could work, actually reimagining how television could work. So as an R&D project to prepare for this webinar, we decided we would invent the future of television using this framework. There are a few challenges that we could tackle. We thought we'd choose the one where media is a little decentralized. If I want to watch TV, I can go to my tvOS, my set-top box, my Android TV. I can look at content on the web. I can stream content from my phone to my television. There's a lot of options. Sometimes I can watch content on demand. Sometimes I can watch live content. And our challenge, we thought, was there should be a bird's eye view to look at all content. It doesn't make sense jumping in and out of various experiences. So we thought we'd use this framework to explore that. Our desired outcome, pretty clear, decrease the time it takes to find something to watch. So using this framework, we thought we would go out and uncover what jobs are viewers trying to complete in order to reach this outcome. And so using some of the design thinking frameworks that Daniel brought to life, we collected a few jobs. For example, I need to find something that my partner and I both want to watch. I don't know about you all, but when you sit down on the couch and you and your partner are trying to watch something on television, it can take up to 20 minutes sometimes figuring out what the other person's in the mood for, what their preferences are, what they've watched recently in the past. It's a headache and it's a job to be done. Another job we collected was, well, it depends what my goals are. Sometimes I want to watch, sometimes I want to binge watch. Sometimes I want to just feel connected by watching live television. Sometimes I just need background noise while I cook, to be honest. So there's this kind of job of goal-based television. Another thing we heard for those who get FOMO out there is I want to know what my friends are currently watching, more of the social watcher. They like to talk about their content. And so one job they have is to somehow figure out what everyone else is watching. So you can kind of get the idea here. We collected lots of different jobs through our exploratory phase. And we started to journey map them chronologically. From the first phase, first I need to explore and be inspired to watch something new, to, okay, now I need to judge content. I need to actually determine if this content is for me, and then ultimately engage with content. So here you have your classic journey map, and as Daniel pointed out, it's a little anecdotal and difficult for digital leaders and stakeholders to understand where they should act first. So to solve for that, we launched a survey internally, and we asked people how important and satisfied they are with these current jobs. And we started to get some data back that helped us narrow our focus. So here you can see using overlooks formula, we take the gap between the two, we add that to importance, and this gives us a universal metric here to look at across all jobs. Here you can see some of the biggest opportunities. So we've nicknamed this no longer a journey map, but it's an opportunity map. It's clear where the opportunities are. So I'm sure your eyes are going to some of the higher points here. Let's focus in on some of these. The second to the left one, I need to find something my partner and I both want to watch. It turns out a lot of people felt that was an important job, but aren't currently satisfied with any solutions in the market to how that's implemented. So here's our dartboard. Here's a very important dartboard, and we can begin sowing darts. So we started doing just that. We started mocking up different experiences that it might look like for you and your partner to sit down and watch something together. So let's pretend we sit down on my account, the guest comes in, enters a code, we're both authenticated, and we then see curated content that meets both of our needs. So that's an example of an opportunity score that was high. It also helps us figure out what not to focus on, which is also sometimes the most important thing out of these strategy engagements is what not to do. And so you can see somewhat to the right in the middle, seeing my friends' favorite moments from content they watched did not test that well. Spoiler alert, anything social related usually doesn't test that well in our labs, we found out. But back to some of the things that did test well, goal-based television was another need that wasn't currently met. So you can start to vision a solution for that. I'm in the mood for something binge-worthy, or I just need background noise, or I just want to feel connected to other people. So hopefully that illustrates how we can use a framework to narrow in a problem space and really set up guardrails for our innovation practice before we start throwing these darts. So let's open it up to discussion. I just want to call out a few tools that are now available to you as thanks for joining our webinar. And I thought I'd frame them a little bit in our practice. So today we looked at opportunity maps. This really helps narrow focus in the problem phase. As thank you, we're going to release content and how-tos for the solution phase as well. We have some content on best practices around prototyping, concept testing, how do you rapidly and iterative test and evaluate your ideas, creating ROI-based roadmaps, and as another thank you, we are going to share some of our best practices in running a workshop to figure out what your desired outcomes are. All of these are offerings from our strategy practice. So we'll send you the link now or at the closure of this webinar. You now have access to a free opportunity map template, so you can use this in your space. We're going to send you some more stuff too, such as the how-to blog posts that I discussed, some ideas for further reading, and then as a bonus resource available to you, if you want to take advantage of this, Daniel and I are available to do a consultation call if you're a little stuck on how to apply this, or if we don't get to all the questions today, we're happy to discuss some of your questions down the road. Due to our schedule, we only have 10 slots that are available. So if you send an email to us by 5 p.m. today, we can honor those requests and we can continue the conversation afterwards. So just send an email to nate@willowtreeapps.com and you'll get me on the line and we can talk through some of your questions further. Daniel and I both get really excited about this space, and we have a lot to say, as you can see, because we've gone a little bit long. So we'll switch over to Q&A. So the way this is going to work, if you click your Q&A icon in Zoom, you can type your question there, and then Daniel and I will respond to them. And honestly, we'll just open this up for dialogue. So we can start looking at our first question. Daniel, do you have the first question ready, or?
Yeah, I've got a question from Teresa. Apologies. We use a combination of journey maps and personas to understand customer needs. Is there anywhere that personas can fit into this model? Great question. Do you want to take that, or should I?
Sure. Yeah, I can start, Daniel, and then you can jump on if I miss anything.
Cool.
But I'd say there's 3 phases to the persona evolution at WillowTree. First, during kickoffs, we use personas as an elicitation technique. If you don't yet know who your audience is specifically, we can pull out assumptions of different segments of our audience and we can then test them out through some of our other research methods. So that's step one. Step two, along the evolution of personas, is a lot of times when we get survey data back, we will do a cluster analysis and have some aha moments on personas that we didn't necessarily realize existed. So a little story here, that was the case when we were building some software to help people do clinical research. In the survey, we asked the question, how excited are you to embrace new technology when it's released? And a lot of people said that they are actually opposed to adopting new technology. And we realized that they responded differently to all of our different feature ideas, and realized that that would be a behavior that we need to focus on in our rollout plan that we didn't necessarily know existed in the earlier phases of personas. Just one last note, and then Daniel, if you want to add anything, we do try to keep personas behavior-based as opposed to demographic-based. It just helps us, design around actual habits that we want to influence as opposed to just generalizations.
That's great. I would just add to that at a kind of slightly more tactical level, you can cut this data when you collect it against any other, any attributes you choose to collect from your respondents, obviously. So obviously it's better to know going in how you want to cut it, but sometimes afterwards you realize, and we've seen this happen like in financial services, where we're like, I wonder how that stacks up for people from different parts of the country or who have a family and don't. And if you've collected that data, then you can cut it. And sometimes it's, as Nate said, really interesting what ends up popping for different people with different behaviors or different attributes, et cetera.
The great thing about the Jobs to be done framework is you can slice it different ways. So we can see maybe there's opportunities for certain personas over others, or you can slice it competitively. So you can get the data back for your brand. How important is this to customers of my brand? And you can use it to gain insight with competitors. You can understand where maybe there's a gap along your customer experience that doesn't exist with competitors. So we've also found it really helpful to competitively juxtapose digital experiences.
Cool. And we've got one more, or may have time for one more, but the next question from Ian, is there a target, this is a tough one, is there a target number of jobs to survey? And how do you know if you have enough? That is a tough one.
I got something. What are you thinking, Daniel?
Go for it. I've got something.
So our research team would advise you have to look out for survey fatigue. Generally, participants can respond to about 15 questions before they get bored. We all have short attention spans, let's be honest. And so we tried to keep jobs around 15. We do draw a line between our internal level of confidence. So for example, finding critical reviews when watching something to watch on TV. That's solved for. Maybe that's not as big of an unknown as some of our blue sky ideas. And so we can de-scope that out of the survey. One other thought here is we can get a little creative in our survey design. So for some subsample, we can keep the question set to 15, but for another sample, maybe we throw in question 16, 17, 18, but take away question 1, 2, 3, and we distribute the question load evenly. So that's another way we tend to deal with that issue. So we'll make that the last question due to time. We really want to appreciate everyone for tuning in. We understand that everyone's busy, but we really hope this framework helps you spearhead the unknown. There's a lot of unknown now. There'll continue to be a lot of unknown going forward. Forrester Research, one of our partners, says the best way to tackle unknowns is through rapid build, measure, learn loops, and that's exactly what this framework is. Let's get data in, let data make the guiding decisions, as opposed to design by committee, for example. So we'll send you a link to this free opportunity map. We'll send you a link to further reading. And if you want to talk more with Daniel or myself, we're real chatty people. We'd love to discuss your challenges further. My email is nate@willowtreeapps.com. And this will be available as a recorded experience for you to view afterwards in case there was some thought that you missed. Thanks again, everyone. Appreciate your attention.
Thanks, everybody.